Something else I want to follow that's developing is there has been a lot of activity in state legislatures to ensure the integrity of our elections. After 2020, a lot of people concerned, and I told you, I said, look, you've got to get busy. You've got to talk to your state legislators, and they have to correct the issues that came to the forefront during this election so that you will not disengage in terms of voting. Well, here to tell us what he's been tracking and what we might expect going into the 2022 midterm elections and even the 2024 presidential election is Jason Snead, Executive Director of the Honest Elections Project. Jason, welcome back to the program.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
So, Jason, last year, a lot of election reform measures that went through state legislatures, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 19 states, somewhere in that neighborhood. But we're seeing even more this year. Tell us about it.
Well, that's right. And this is actually quite unusual for someone who has been tracking these issues for a long time to see so much energy back to back, year after year. I think it's actually something that's been long overdue, and I hope that we'll continue to see it. But this year, there are actually, if you can believe it, over 2,300 bills pending in legislatures across the country, some of them carried over from last year, some new measures, all designed to do various things to improve the election process, at least some of them coming from the right. One of the big issues that we've been tracking is the ways in which states are improving the security for absentee and mail-in ballots. So making that mail-in balloting process work better, work more transparently, doing things like bringing voter identification requirements, which are very common sense and very popular in in-person voting, bringing those to mail-in voting as well. We're also seeing a tremendous amount of energy being put into cleaning up voter rolls and developing policies to keep them clean on an ongoing basis, which actually dovetails quite nicely with improving the mail-in voting process, because after all, you don't want to mail ballots to people who aren't eligible to vote in your jurisdiction or may in fact be dead. So that's a vital improvement to the process. We're talking about improving the voter registration process as well, tackling litigation and ending private funding, and a whole host of other measures I'd be happy to get into.
Well, Jason, it's encouraging. I think voters should be encouraged. Those that were concerned about their ballot not being counted or somehow, being dismissed in this last election or, eclipsed by illegal voting. This is good news that the state legislators, state leaders have taken this on so seriously. Now, this, of course, has evoked the wrath of the left. That's why we see Congress and the Democrats trying to push this federal takeover of elections. But tell our viewers and our listeners some of the things in some of the states where these things are moving right now, where they can actually be a part of helping push this across the line.
Well, that's absolutely right. The number one goal here is to improve our election system, to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat so that we're bolstering voter confidence. And a big part of this is indeed getting individuals who are, after all, voters involved in this process. And there's a number of states where we're actually tracking legislation right now. Some of them are big states like Arizona, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin. And when I say big states, I mean these are big states in terms of national politics, right? These are the swing states that everyone watches closely and engages in presidential years. Some of these states are going to have very competitive Senate races this year. So there's a lot of attention being focused into these states. There's also a lot of effort being put into them in their state legislatures to get these improvements done ahead of the next round of elections. In Florida, for instance, there is a measure which is moving through the legislature right now, which would do something which is not quite unique, but almost so. It would create an investigatory bureau within the state government to actually investigate instances of alleged election crimes. And this is so important because one of the things that we know is that too often allegations of wrongdoing go uninvestigated. We know that prosecutors devote resources to many other areas besides election law. So this is a potentially good step to make sure that we are at the very least investigating and getting answers as to whether allegations of fraud or wrongdoing are accurate, and then hopefully getting prosecutions if there is fraud. And then there are other measures proceeding through the states as well. In Arizona, they're going to be improving the early voter list there. There's a measure that's moving through the legislature to end same-day registration and a number of other provisions. And of course, in Michigan right now, there's a signature gathering process going forward called Secure My Vote, where if they actually get the requisite number of signatures, this petition goes straight to the legislature and can be enacted, which would adopt a number of, I think, improvements to state law, including bringing voter ID to absentee ballots.
So Jason, not only does this give voters greater confidence going forward in terms of the election, but it pushes back on the narrative of the left in Washington, D.C. here, where they're wanting to say, oh, we've got to make sure we have elections that everybody's vote counts. I mean, the states are doing what the states should do, and this is evidence of that. It's quite encouraging to me.
Oh, it's very encouraging. I think that we should see this level of engagement every single year. We have an election at least every 2 years in this country, and we always learn lessons. And so I think it is incumbent upon our state lawmakers to look at the last election, to see where there were failures, to see where there were problems, and then to identify solutions and adopt them. And, very much we want to see this at the state level, not at the federal level, but at the state level. That's
right.
where the founders wanted to put this power. And there's so much benefit that comes from this. States can experiment, see what works,
Right.
and replicate success while avoiding failures. And so I'm very, very glad to see this level of energy being devoted to this issue. It's so vitally important. And one thing that you brought up, the left is always saying that we need to make voting effortless. That's really what they want. They want voting to be effortless. They want to get rid of the basic safeguards that secure the process and give meaning to our vote and allow us to have confidence that election results are actually the results that reflect the will of the people. And so, my counter to that is quite simple. The best way to get people to vote is to show them that their ballots have meaning.
Right.
The left says we need to make it effortless. I say we need to make it easy to vote, but also hard to cheat so that your ballot counts.
Jason, we're out of time. Very quickly, where can folks find out more about the states you're tracking?
Go to our website, honestelections.org, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook. We're posting a lot of up-to-date information on both of those platforms.
Very good. Thanks so much for joining us today.